Most people build a RAG system once, load all of their documents into it, and then never touch it again. But then they wonder why their AI agents and chatbots are giving them outdated answers when they've given it new information. I've built dozens of these systems for clients and on this YouTube channel, and this one main mistake renders most workflows absolutely useless. So let me show you the problem we're solving today. We're going to come across to our vector database. We see we've got nothing in here at the moment. We're going to quickly load in a document with some reference metadata for us to pull out. As we can see here, if I just refresh, we've now got all of this information stored and ready to go for us to use. But say we go through and we've updated our document and we need to add it back into Google Drive. So we've got a new version. What we're going to do is delete the old one in here. We're then going to come through and upload the new version of it. We're going to keep the same name of the document as well, just to make sure that the AI system knows exactly what we're referring to. So that's now all uploaded. If we come back across, the new workflow we're adding in is simply going to be able to capture the updated document, check if it already exists. We're then going to delete that existing data, the old data compared to our new version, and then we're going to go through and store it nice and easily so we always have the latest information readily available. Today I'm going to show you how to set up an n8n workflow that automatically keeps your RAG database up to date. So every time you go through an updated document and replace it, you'll always have that latest information readily available. We're going to do it with a simple 4-step process. Firstly, of getting all of those new files, then checking if that data already exists in Pinecone. We're then going to delete the old data and load in the new data ready to use. So by the end of this, you'll have a fully working system that's able to go through and update your Pinecone vector database on autopilot. If you don't do this, your AI is going to use every single version of that document you've ever uploaded. And if you want to skip the hard work of building it yourself, click the first link in the description and join a community of hundreds building and working with AI and automation. So why does this matter? Well, every time you load a version of that document into Pinecone, it's going to store it. But if you haven't told it to delete the old data, when you add version 2, it will add it as well. It will then add version 3, version 4, and version 5. So rather than your Pinecone database only storing that latest, greatest information in version 5, it's going to reference every single version of that document you've ever added in. And what this means for us is when we then go and chat with it and say, tell me about X, Y, or Z for our business or as a customer, they're not going to get the correct response back because they're referencing all of the versions of those documents. So what we want to do instead is when we've got our document being loaded in, we want to tell it everything about this document, the name, some of the supporting information, maybe a doc ID if you're using it in Google Drive. And what this means is when we then go through and add version 2, we'll delete version 1, remove it, then we'll go through and be able to add version 2. And that way we're always going to have the latest version of our data readily accessible for us to use. So we're following on from a previous video that I did, so definitely come across and check this out if you want to learn how to chat back and forth with documents as well as set up and load up your Pinecone vector database. I'll include it in the links down below as well. So now let's walk through how this works step by step. First of all, we're actually going to need to come across to where we first loaded in our data. What I'm going to do is just trigger these two processes so that it pulls our FAQ document into the workflow. When you're going through and actually using Pinecone vector store and doing add documents to vector store, we're going to need to make a few changes. Once you've added it in here, make sure to come through to your default data loader, and you need to add in the metadata element, and you want to give it a name. Now, this can be anything you want it to be. It could be your name, it could be certain IDs, it can be daytime. Anything you want to add in is just going to help us reference that specific document once it's loaded into our vector database. So for example, you could have it as a category code, maybe sales information, customer support, anything like that you could add in. For today, I'm going to do doc ID, and we're just going to put across original file name. So that's going to be everything that we need for the metadata to start off with. Now, as you can see here, I've removed all of the previous data, so it's empty. But if we come through, trigger this process, we're now going to go through and store all of this data in our vector database for us to use. So if we just refresh, what we'll see here is we've now got 8 records because it's chunked up all of that data into more manageable bytes, basically. If we then come down here, we're also going to see our metadata of doc ID, Blue Heron FAQ doc PDF. So if you wanted to, for example, if I came back into here and I added doc type, I could add in maybe FAQ. And then if we were to re-execute this again, this will add another 8 chunks of data into our database here. So we do have some duplicates, which we're going to get rid of. But what I want to demonstrate to you now is if we come down here, we'll see that we've now got the metadata of doc ID, Blue Heron FAQ, and doc type of FAQ. So this means if you wanted to go through and store lots of different data in there and be able to reference it nice and easily, maybe you go through a rebranding of your business or some marketing strategies, then you could come into here, delete all of the marketing data that previously existed and re-upload all the new information. And that's why it's really important that we go through this process to make sure you've always got that latest data readily available. So we've added all of our data into our vector database. Now we're going to go through how we update it. So imagine that we've come through, we've deleted our document in here, we've then made a few changes offline and we're re-uploading it. What we're going to do is file upload. We're going to save it in here with the same name that we're going to use. You can do, and I'll show you in a second, we can actually do based on changes as well. So I'm using a Google Drive trigger, which is Drive and Google Drive. And then right down the bottom, you'll have triggers and on changes involving a specific folder, as you can see here. What this will mean is any time a change occurs to this folder that we've created called build rag agents in minutes, that will trigger this process. If you've not connected into Google before, make sure to come across to our community. We've got lots of great setting up explainers in here, which will walk you through step by step how to get it all set up. If we come back across though, what we're looking for at the moment is every minute, but you can set that to maybe once a week, once a month, whatever you prefer. What we're saying is we're looking for changes involving a specific folder, and that specific folder is the one that we mentioned beforehand. So if you've got a new one, just type it in there and it will pull it through. We're also looking for any file that's been created, we want to add in there. But if you wanted to do every time that file is updated, for example, you can do that instead nice and easily. So it's just up to you for personal preference. We're then going to come through and download that file into our workflow here. Next, we're going to come through to use Pinecone. Now, Pinecone is a fantastic starter platform for you to use as that knowledge base for your company. It's used by lots of large companies as well, and you can get started totally for free. Make sure to come across, check out the other video that I've done on how to get it set up properly. Once we've created the index that we're going to be using, we're going to need to go through and reference it and make the changes easily in n8n. So we'll come back across. This next module we're using here is a pinecone, and then we're doing get ranked documents in vector store. The reason for this is because we want to pull back all of the data that relates to our metadata filter. So if I come into the one we've already generated, we've connected in our credentials, which again, we show you in the community how to do. We're going to do a get many operation because we want to get any of the specific data that we already have that relates to this document. We've given it our pinecone index, which is this one here that we've created called Blue Heron, and we've done Blue Heron in here. We've given it a simple prompt saying, please get all of the files relating to this new file. Basically, what we're saying is pull back any of the information that you can find. We've increased the limit quite considerably up to 1,000, but you'll need to play around with this depending on your document size. If you're adding in lots and lots of large text documents, you may need to increase this. The reason we're getting it so high is because then we're going to make sure that we pull back any and all information that relates to that metadata ID filter so that we can then delete it and update it. If you have this too low, what it will mean is it will miss some of the data and it won't delete it. So then, as mentioned, it will then reference old data that isn't correct anymore. So we're going to increase that limit. We're also going to include metadata because then what we want to do is make sure that we're filtering based on that. So we're going to come down to options and metadata filter. We're going to do add metadata filter option. And then if we come back across, what do we call it? It was doc ID. So we'll come back across and paste that in here. Now the value, again, this is whatever that value is that you originally had. In our use case here, it was name. So now what we're going to be able to do is execute this step, and we should get, in this use case, 16 different records that come back. So if we execute this, as we can see here, we've now got 16 items that have come back, all with the information that we need for this RAG database. We've got all of the contents that it's got associated with this chunk, as well as the meta ID of doc ID and document type. We've got some other information in there, but it's not as important. So now we've pulled it into our workflow. How do we go through and delete it? Well, unfortunately, at the moment, there's no delete data node within n8n and pinecone. So what we're going to do is actually add in a HTTP request to make this request over the internet, but it's still secure, don't worry about that. We're going to come across to the delete records by metadata document. I'll include this down below so you can find it nice and easily. You want to copy this curl request, come back across to your workflow and import into here. You'll need to come up and just delete the top part actually, because it's just going to mess up some of the formatting. We're then going to need to go through and make some changes. So I'm just going to get rid of that example there and come into the one we've already generated. First of all, you're going to need to update the first part of the URL here so that it's got your pinecone URL at the start. You're then going to have /vectors/delete at the end. So how do you find this? Well, if you come back to the index that you've already created, you'll find the host URL at the top. Just copy that, come back across and paste into here, and now it's all ready to go and it will reference that specific index. If we come down, you can add your authentication as a header, or for today's example, I've just added an API key in here. This is the important part though. What we're going to do in here is change the body that originally came back. So what you'll need to do is update the filter and the filter value and the namespace. You can have multiple different filters in here if you want to. You just need to make sure it relates back to whatever you've used. So for example, in this use case, what we've got is our filter metadata is called doc ID. If we come back across, come down the bottom, we've got doc ID and doc type. So we'll come back into here. We've said we want our doc ID to equal our doc name. So as you can see in here, it's basically putting through, and this is the feature I love with n8n, we can see exactly what it would look like. So we know that our doc ID is equaling document metadata, which if we just close this down, what we're looking for is if you close all of these down and come back down to the name reference, or even if you use the existing metadata, you can put across that doc ID. Either way, you just need to make sure whatever your metadata field is called is added in there, and then whatever you want it to equal is added in here. So for example, if I copy this, we do comma and enter. What I could also do as well is in here we had doc type. So we'll do doc, and then in this use case, I didn't make it a dynamic field. So we'll just delete this and say FAQ. Now what this is going to do is try and search through our database and delete anything that has the doc ID of Blue Heron FAQ and anything with the document type of FAQ. The other thing you're going to need to update is namespace. To find that, come back across to your index. You're going to come across to namespaces and you'll be able to find it in here nice and easily. So in this use case, we've just got default. So we're going to copy this, come back across and paste into where it has namespace. Now we've got it all ready to go and it's telling us where to reference it. We were able to execute step to delete all of that data. So now if I come back across, come back to the browser and just refresh here. Now what you'll see here is we've got the record count of 8 because it's gone through and deleted all of those documents that had both the doc ID of Blue Heron FAQ, but also the document type of FAQ. So now that we've got rid of that first batch of 8, what we're going to be able to do is come back to our metadata filter. We'll get rid of this second part here. So it's now ready to go. We'll add that on the end. We'll do delete data again. And now what it's going to go through and do is if we just refresh this, we should now have 0 data points within our vector database, as you can see here, because it's correctly deleted everything in there. So remember that if you add more filters, they're going to stack on top of each other for that deletion process. So now that we've done all of the deletion, we can go through and add in our new version. We're going to limit the number of process points coming through just to make sure we execute the rest of the process once. We're then going to come through and use the usual pinecone and then add in our add documents to vector store. This way we're going to be able to go through, choose the actual database index we want to store it in, as we can see here, and use it nice and easily. We'll open this up, as we can see here, exactly the same as before. And in our default data loader, we're going to have that file name ready to go. So now, if I execute that step, it's going to go through, add in the 8 items back, as we can see here. If I just refresh this, so there we go, we've now got the 8 records back in here. So it's now going to be that latest information, as we can see here, ready to go for us to use. Make sure to come across to our community if you want to get access to the resources or join lots of other members building and selling with AI. Stay tuned for more around AI and automation and have a great day.